Good evening. My name is Stratos Papadimitriou, and it is a great joy and honor to be the moderator of this panel with the distinguished and excellent professionals in the field of logistics and supply chain, whom I will be introducing right away. To my left, the right, as you see, is Madam Aphroditi Koutsopoulou, who is Vice President of the Supply Chain of Alpha Vita Vasilopoulos. At the center, we have Thanos Mavros, who is a partner business consulting services of Ernst & Young Greece, Supply Chain Operations Leader, and broader for EUI Greece and Central and Eastern and Southern Europe and Central Asia. To me, I have Madam Nana Gula, who is Product Supply Senior Director of Procter & Gamble, Southeast Europe. Our subject is supply chain management on one hand, and on the other hand, to what extent our country can attract the investments in the supply chain sector. I personally come from the field of transportation and maritime transports, more specifically, that is very active. Suffice to say that had we not have marine and transports, half of the world would have freezed and the other half would starve. So this I consider my sound exaggeration, but it is true to a great extent. And the colleagues, all the people involved in the supply chain, are challenged to respond to the special challenges that arose lately. Furthermore, another catchphrase is that supply chain is like nature, can be found everywhere. It surrounds us everywhere. And this is also reality. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor and raise the first question first to Madam Koutsopoulou. Ask the following. Supply chain was indeed at the spotlight lately, due both to the pandemic and the Ukraine war and many other reasons. What were the factors that demonstrated and promoted this role that much, and to what extent companies like yours have responded to this role? And if you like, in the same question that follows suit, has there been in the supply chain the feeling of the sense of resilience and adaptability and flexibility in these dire circumstances?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me here. It's a beautiful question, particularly as of late when the supply chain has been at the spotlight. COVID helped us very much to look at things and to try to bring the client, the customer closer to the branches, the shops and the businesses that they couldn't go to. So in terms of supply chain, we were forced, in inverted commas, to invest and to approach the clients, bring them next to us. So we invested in last mile and the Thai e-commerce shops, so as to come closer and cover and meet the needs of the consumer. Truth be told, we in Vasilopoulos invested very much in both in systems and in infrastructures to get right next to them very, very fast. But we didn't stop there. We continued investing in other systems as well. We invested in ordering and feedback systems, both on behalf of the client, the customer, and on behalf of the supplier, so that this chain would be smooth, to transition into it smooth and to cover all needs, underlying needs. So over the past 2 years, the supply chain came here and came here to stay. We've already made investments and we will keep on investing on different links of this chain. Right, thank you very much, Mrs. Koutsopoulou. I would like to ask the same question to the other lady in our company, Mrs. Gula. To ask you something slightly different now. You're working in a sector that is product-oriented, consumer product-oriented. How did you respond to these changes, to these adverse conditions? And to what extent do you think that this supply chain is capable of meeting the needs of your clients? Right, so you started with the ladies first. Thank you so much for that. Now, Mr. Papadimitriou, I'm working in the supply chain sector for the past 13 years, 23 years. And if you asked me last year, I would have said I've seen it all. But what we experienced last summer after the war broke out in Ukraine, it exceeded all provisions and predictions. We had to meet successive challenges in many parts of the supply chain, be that the finding of raw materials, finding drivers, different routes to bring our products in. Different production lines. And of course, we focused our interest on a supply chain as P&G because the most important reason we did that, well, actually, the reasons are two. The first and foremost is for the product to be on the shelf. Like Mrs. Kutsopoulou said, it is our priority as well for the product to be on the shelf. Before the pandemic, the consumers did not know what a shortage is. They never saw empty shelves, and no one had ever thought, it never crossed their minds to think how many times this product is laden and unladen until it reaches the shelf. So this shortage in the shelves last summer led us to turn to see how we can make our supply chain more resilient, and, of course, to help the consumer. Now, of course, this is a top-bottom new CEO, Mr. Moller, a mere weeks after he took on the leadership of P&G, set very few but very specific goals. They are very few, and one of them was the supply chain. To give you an idea, his focus on the supply chain is such that whenever he sees a CEO of one of our large customers, he does not meet them either in their office or in our stores, as he usually did. On his demand, he goes to their distribution centers, their own distribution centers. So it starts from the head, such a decision. Now, you talked about resilience and what we did. Well, I must say that resilience is not something that you can acquire overnight. You can't build it overnight. It takes strategy and it takes investments. So we in P&G, because we have a very complex network, we're talking about 40,000 raw material suppliers, 250 storage areas, 150 factories. We tried to make this system more flexible. What do I mean by that? We try to find alternatives, plan Bs. When a supplier can't bring us product A, another one can. When a transportation route cannot be accomplished traditionally, to have an alternative. So even before the COVID pandemic, we built a more flexible, a more simplified network. It helped us tremendously both during the pandemic and now. I have two characteristic examples. During the pandemic, we changed our entire supply head in Malta, and we used to bring the products in via container. We did it using the road network. I mean, such solutions are less expensive. So when you start digging, you find simpler, easier solutions that are closer to the consumer and cheaper. Now, a key example as to how this flexible supply chain helped us during the war is our example with our factory in the Ukraine. On the day that the war broke, we lost all the female hygiene product supply because our factory was in the Ukraine. We had to close it down to protect our colleagues in Ukraine, but we can't leave consumers, female consumers, without their female hygiene products. So we had to transport our entire production to our factory in Budapest. Now, in conclusion, it's a one-way street to add to the supply chain. Right.
Yes, all the innovations have happened, as it happens usually with wars. Let us conclude with my dear Panos Mavros. Since Madame Bourla mentioned the word investments, the data, the conclusions, the basic data that arose from the latest survey of EY vis-à-vis the attractive survey of Greece for 2022 What are the final conclusions vis-à-vis Greece as a country of investment interest, and more specifically for supply chains? Well, thank you for the question. I'm glad, dear Stratos, seeing you in live after so much time. You know that I have studied in the USA. My professor at the time would say that we respond with open book and open notes. So allow me to use my notes, have recourse to my notes. So EWAY attractiveness survey affected in Greece in 2022 is a reiterated survey on supply chain. I point out three elements. And the question, how do you change the model of supply chain? 250 companies, corporates, that is the question, 144 established in Greece, 106 outside Greece. And they all said that they reduced the dependency of their supply chain from one single predominant country as main supplier. More than half of the interviewees, 54%, said, yes, we do so. More than half had replied, 51% in 2021. So this was a trend that was already appearing before 2021, but within the 12 months there has been differentiation. Question, whether they operate more regional models of supply chain. Here again, 49% in 21, 52% this year. The question, sub-question, concerning the increase of their manufacturing presence elsewhere in Europe, there I see smiles around, from 13% that was in 2021, in almost half now, 48% in 2022. So what you did, either you could not help it, or even when there are no direct needs or the war, and doesn't affect, it does affect the psychology, the substantial psychology that tomorrow something else might close down. Here, at the question, I'll give you some examples. We see that generally speaking, in transport and logistics, we see one recurring paradigm, privatization infrastructure. The central ports, Athens, Thessaloniki, are privatized, and big investments are currently in progress. Regional ports will also be privatized, or are in the process of being privatized, have this trend, such as Alexandroupolis, for instance. Now, airports, the central one of Athens and the regional ones, the train, the operators of train, everything is privatized. National roads, everything is privatized. So we see a landscape now extremely important, or if you like, to the right direction, because have been complaining for years that this pertains to the public and so forth. This is no longer the case. Furthermore, we see serious funds being diverted, coming here, not merely some people coming just to build a trade zone as a gate from the east to Central Europe. We see SIG, the Fondo Invencio, creating the logistics city, but at the same time, we see important investors, operators. Yes, previous week, I believe, we saw Veinorlu. We see VGP Parks coming along and established and wanting to erect big infrastructure projects. This appears in the market. It appears, therefore, that there's also an overall situation that corporates view due to the needs, due to the problems, due to the cutting the dependency and weakening of infrastructure. We see corporates, I don't want to put names, but we see them that they see Greece for the first time as a transport hub for Eastern Mediterranean in a substantial way, and serving the Northern Africa countries without playing the fortune teller. The logical evolution is that many corporates see Greece as a regional hub center. Most interesting and useful proposals, the way actions must be implemented so as to accelerate infrastructure for the attraction of investments in the logistics sector. Let's have one more round of questions in the same direction. Let me say the following. The World Bank has this logistics performance index published every 2 years with 6 indices. Part of those indices do not concern solely infrastructure, but also other indices such as tracking and tracing, visibility in the supply chain, to what extent we have well-trained and capable workforce to satisfy the supply chain, how our customs operate. So at this second round, I would like to give the floor to the three of you, keeping the same track. Madam Kutsopoulou first. How do you view enhancing the role and the importance of the supply chain, and to what extent and under what circumstances can we attract more investments?
Right. I will start by saying that we see this very important part of the supply chain and how necessary it is for us to keep investing in that in order to be able to cover the needs of the country. We invest in buildings, in premises, in trucks. We invest in systems. We expand. We correct and amend our buildings in order to meet and respond to this need and this pressure. Because as I said before, supply chain is here to stay, and it's a path we'll tread down on. Quite clearly, a part that has already been mentioned, and I think was mentioned in the previous panel, is that of the labor force. It's something we need to invest in and to start supporting. It's a part that's missing in terms of drivers, of staff, of laborers. It's been made apparent in Europe for a long time and started touching on Greece as of late. So we need to start supporting it even more. We need to start coming up with resources, with strength, powers to keep investing. We as Alpha Vita Vasilopoulos continue our investment. We believe in this. We believe that Greece is a part, like Mr. Mavros said, of the European Union. Our ports have expanded, trains have started improving, and the railroad is working. So connection with Europe is a matter of, well, it's yesterday's news. Thank you very much, Mrs. Kutsopoulou. Let's move on to Mr. Mavros and to say, Mr. Mavros, what is the conclusion at the end of the day? If you had to make a proposal to the competent minister or the competent group or team in relation to the increase of the power and the dynamic of our country as it could have in the field of supply chain and logistics in general, as a hub of entry, of exit, and of transit of cargo. Now again, I look at my cheat sheet, and there are 7 points. You already mentioned it. It's the interconnection of the main ports supports with road and railroad networks. It's a must. There have been many announcements in that direction, but it appears that the RRF is helping in terms of money. The further development of the road network, motorways, not just for reasons of safety of citizens, but even further, I'm talking about utilization, the central road to Lavrion, to Athens. We know all these things, Attiki-Odos. These projects are very concise and very precise. We need to rationalize the cost of fares for crossing these thoroughfares. And it's something we need to understand, because I heard the previous panel being said something that's very good for the Turkish market, because at some point Turkish transport companies or even transporters with a single truck for all their export trucks had zero taxation. Okay, I'm not a specialist in taxation. I'm not making this suggestion. We can't do this here because we're working on a different rationale. But at least in terms of tolls and toll booths, it's a very serious thing to understand. Acceleration of privatizations in the regional ports, it appears to be in the pipeline as well. But also some hinterland logistics, some infrastructures that will not be of storage nature, not just the Costco's PCDC. We need something to do with repackaging or relabeling, and to do something on that. And even greater capacity in the railroad for operators. And of course, the electromobility has been announced of the network, at least in the main branches it has, in the main trunks. And we need some logistics infrastructures from sub-products like agricultural products, the so-called agri-logistics in specific areas. We know which they are. There isn't a need for many studies. We know these things. And all this part needs to be interconnected, using the naval and the maritime complex and the capabilities and potential of the Greek ecosystem. We need to carry this ensemble and to link it in. So integration? Yes, integration. In terms of human resources, I will agree that there is in fact an issue in midway and below, and I will try to say this, and please do not misunderstand me. Upwardly speaking, Greek logisticians that we have in the country today, who hold excellent positions in companies abroad, are unique. I mean, I don't know how this came to pass, but we see in huge corporate entities, and I will not name any names, Greek men and women who are leaders in this thing. So we do have the potential, the capacity in the upper part, and the same goes for technology, which is equally important. Thank you very much. Well, thank you. Now, for the remaining time, Mrs. Wula, please answer the same question. If you'd like, you can talk to us about your actions in this field in terms of enhancing this purpose, this goal. Well, truly, I agree with your comments and my esteemed interlocutors. Yes, it is the geographical position of Greece. Yes, it is the infrastructures we have and we see being created. But I will focus on Greek dynamic, Greek talents, and Greek know-how through an example that we experienced in our company very recently. Actually, it was an opportunity seized by P&G Greece, which arose as a result of the pandemic, believe it or not. One of the speakers said yesterday we shouldn't leave a single crisis go untapped. We in P&G Europe have approximately 40 distribution centers scattered all over Greece, 40 large warehouses, to make it clearer. During the pandemic, all these storerooms, these warehouses, worked unhindered. But we saw that some of our colleagues worked from home, remotely worked. So even in the distribution centers, there are jobs that do not require physical presence of the staff. So we thought this: instead of having 3 people in each warehouse managing some of these tasks, for instance, inventorying, stock analysis, service level analysis, managing inventory that is no longer necessary or needed, some quality assurance processes, systems experts, very important. So we said, instead of having these people there, wouldn't it be better to gather all these people in a single hub that will have a single center, a single basis that will do all these tasks and find synergies that will apply to all storerooms, to run pilot projects that can apply to all storerooms. So I would like to share with you that this idea is that, yes, we will have a hub that will be created come next January, and Greece, among 9 countries of P&G Europe, was selected to host this hub. which will do this. It will control all Europe, all our distribution centers in some of the tasks I mentioned. Some people may think, yes, of course, Greece, because Greece is cheaper, it's more economical. Now, I want to say that this was not the criterion, because more economical companies were offered from other countries in PNG Europe, but this was the unique combination of Greek know-how and talent with a good, financially sound proposal. So this vote of confidence we will honor. This is excellent news. And I sincerely hope that other companies will do the same. Our country does have the capability, the potential, the characteristics even, that will allow it to play a key role in the whole of southeastern Europe. Truly, it connects 3 continents. It has the maritime power. So the area of supply chain may in fact be very important and very useful for the economy of our country as an investment leverage as well. Thank you all very much for being with us.